when I come back, I'm gonna have to shovel right away. Hey,
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. When I came to shul, there was nothing, zero, not a flake, and now it's coming down.
how much snow are they expecting?
I don't know. I stopped listening to the news. They're just fear mongers.
I hear it. You're saying good. Okay, let's have a look. See, at the mission. So kol sheloi zacha hamizbeach b'bsara.
Your daf is not on the screen in case if you wanted it.
I did want it, so let me do the share again.
He's giving instructions there. Ellie and Shoulder.
Huh?
Ellie and Shoulder.
Okay, great.
Where's the other?
Okay.
Top of the Mishnah. No,
Kol sheloi zacha hamizbeach b'bsara. If the mizbeach wasn't zoichet to the basar of a carbon oila, for instance, there was a psul in the carbon that occurred before the zrika. Now, if a psul occurred in the carbon before the zrika, the basar does not go on the mizbeach. So if the mizbeach doesn't get its share, loy zachu kaihanim ba'oila. The kaihanim won't be entitled to the hide of the carbon oila. Shenamar oilas ish. The lashon pasuk that tells us this chiddush that by a carbon oila the kohen gets the or is ba'kohen hamakriv es oilas ish or ha'oila asher hikriv la'kohen lo yiyah. This pasuk is going to be the subject of today's Gemara. We're going to analyze this pasuk and dissect this pasuk and learn all the different, extract all the different lemudim from every little word over here. So let's have a look. It says oilas ish, and we darshan oila she'alsa leish. It had to be an oila that fulfilled its purpose for the person, meaning it's a kosher carbon. Since it's not a kosher carbon, then the rule stated in this pasuk of lakayin lo yiyah does not apply. But just let's point out a lot of interesting things in the pasuk. If all the pasuk was telling us that the kohen gets the or ha'oila, what it should have said is v'kohen hamakriv oila or lieloi. That's all I have to say. But there's a lot of extra words. It's first as oilas ish. So oilas ish, we learn, is telling us dafke if it was oila l'bayla m'shem chayva. But then it says or ha'oila. That's completely extra. And then asher hikriv, it already says v'kohen hamakriv. So asher hikriv is extra as well. Lakayin lo yiyah is also extra because it could have just said lakayin. The kohen hamakriv is oila or lakayin. So there's so many extra words in this pasuk that are screaming at us. Please darshan. So we at least got the answer to the first oila ish. Oila also ish. Oila shenishchata shaloy lishma. So we know in oila shenishchata lishma, it's a kosher carbon. It's just not. It's not oila l'bayil l'shem chayva. So this should not qualify for oila ish. So therefore oila shenishchata shaloy lishma. Aval b'shaloi also l'bayil. Oyer is l'kayhan. Now that's going to need an explanation because it's not oila ish. It wasn't oila also ish. It might have been a kosher oila, but it wasn't also ish. So we're going to need a pasuk to teach us that if it was a shaloi lishma where the carbon is kosher, there the or does go to the kahan. Now the Mishnah says another interesting thing. Echad oilas ha'ish ve'echad oilas ha'isha are yesem l'kahan. We would have to ask why should there be a difference between if the oila was brought by an ish or an isha? That's something that the Gemara is going to discuss. Oiras kadeshim kalam. Who gets the or of a shalomim, for instance? L'baylam. That goes to the baylam. Incidentally, the meat of the kadeshim kalam go to the baylam as well, and that's going to be very relevant. Who gets the meat will be very relevant in impacting who gets the hide. Oiras kachim, like a chatos and an osham, is like a hand, and it's a kavachayim. Umayim oila shaloi zochu b'vsara zochu b'oira. Madach the oila, where the Torah tells us, even though the kohen gets no meat at all, the Torah says he still gets the hide. Kachi kachim shezochu b'vsara. Kachi kachim, that they were zoicha in the basar. It's given to them. Eino din sheyisku b'oira. Surely they should also get the or. You're going to tell me that's not a good kabul chaymer because the mizbeach gets the basar and nevertheless it doesn't get to R. So you see, just because something gets the basar, that doesn't mean it's entitled to the R. You can't bring a right for the mizbeach. Never do you find anywhere where the mizbeach gets any type of R. But we have a pasuk by an oila that tells us mafurish that the coin gets to R. Once we know that, then we can use the Kabbalah Chomer to apply it to Kachay Kachim as well. The whole Gemara today will be discussing how you know that the fact that the Ur is Lakoyim also applies to other Kachim. So Zok the Gemara, Tana Rabbanim, Oilas Ish, Prat Lo Oilas Hektish. So now we have a new link. Oilas Ish, Prat Lo Oilas Hektish. The oil of Hektish, its Ur does not go to the Kohen. What is an oilas hektish? That the Gemara is going to have a three-way machlokes about it soon. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Prat l'oilas gerin. The oil of a ger does not go. High doesn't go to the kohen. Gemara is going to ask: is a ger not an ish? So now we're going to be mefarish to Brisa. Now I just want to stop for a second because you have an art scroll Gemara. If you have a carbon where the R does not go to the kohen, right? So what happens to that R? Do you know what happens to it? Does the art scroll say anything about when the R does not go to the kohen? If it's possible, I understand. It will be burnt. But what if it's an oilus hektish or oilus ager? Whatever these exceptions are that are kosher karbanis, does the art scroll say what you do with the or in those cases?
I don't think we're there yet. We have to go through the details first.
Okay, so because Mati first brought it up, and I didn't even think of that question, but it's a very important question. We're going to have to follow it up. Now, I'm going to tell you that from the Gemara that we're about to learn, there might be a good argument to make that it goes to Beda Kabayis, and it doesn't get destroyed. And we'll see that as the Gemara unfolds. Zok Tahelig the Gemara. My prat oilus hektish. What is this oilus hektish where the Brisa tells us the or does not go to the kohen? Amar Abchir Bar Yosef, the first pshat, prat lo'oila haba min ha-moishros. What are moishros? Moishros are if there's 5 chatoyos ha-mesos, and those are represented by the word vesimna. Vav stands for vlad chatos because the chatos is a female animal, so it can have a baby. The Sof stands for Temuras Chatos. The Mem stands for Mesu Ba'aleha. The Nun stands for Nischapru Ba'aleha. And the Ayin stands for Avar Shnoser. If something happens, if one of these things occur to a Chatos, those animals are left to die. But if something like these 5 conditions occur to an Asham, what you do with it is you let them graze until they get a mum, and then you sell them. And the money that you receive for those karbanos, you bring oilas nedava with. So those oilas nedavas are what we're referring to as oilas hektish, that their hide does not go to the kohen, rather it goes to bedek habayis. Zog to Gemara, hanicha l'man damar moishros lenidvas tibras. They take this asham that belonged to an individual. It gets a moment they sell it. So now who gets the money? Is that money personally the owner of the asham, and then he'll bring a personal oila? Or no, he doesn't get that money. That money is a communal Beis HaMikdash money, and the Beis HaMikdash buys with that money a carbon. So the question is the oila that we're going to buy with the leftover money from the asham, is it a communal oila or is it a personal oila? So Zok to Gemara. If you hold this communal carbon, so then it makes sense. It's oilas hektish, and oilas hektish is not oilas ish, and therefore the hide does not go to the kohen. And according to the Mandamar, that this oila purchased is a regular, simple oila, personal oila. Well, it's a personal oila, it's oilas ish then. So, why would you say that the hide doesn't go to the kohen? Zok Gemara, because of a limud that Rava taught us, even though it's a personal oila, it would not go. The hide would not go to the kohen. Why is that? Hidama Rava. Rabbi Darshan, the pasuk of the pasuk that was referring to Trumas Hadeshin. It says, "Uvir Allah kain ejim abayker ba'arach Allah ha'oila." What do you mean the oila with the hey idea? So Rabbi said that oila ha'oila with the hey idea was referring to oila rishon. It's referring to the first oila of the day. It's referring to the carbon tummy. So ha'oila, that hey, according to Rabbi, has a connotation of the original. So ha'kanami ha'oila oila rishona. Maybe the reason why, even though it's a nidvas yachid, these moishrois, it's not given to the kohen, because in our pasuk it says or ha'oila only if it's a first round draft pick and it was chosen as an oila. But if it was originally an asham and it's only a second round draft pick that it became an oila, that's excluded from ha'oila because of Rava's understanding of the word ha'oila. So now we have an explanation what or hektish means. It means it was purchased from moishris of an asham. Pshat number one stands on its own. Pshat number two. Rabbi Ibai Omar Rabbi Yanai prat lematbis oila lebedek habayis. Someone said harezu oila. He has a carbon oila. He's supposed to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. And what does this Derei cup do? He said, now I'm donating this whole carbon to bedek habayis. So the question is, there's a machlokes amayroim. Does it become bedek habayis? Or you'll say zetafus. It's already occupied. It's already a carbon. Ula holds that it does not become bedek habayis. It's already tied up. It's already an oil. It's already a carbon. But the Amoraim who argue on Ula, the Chachamim say, no, it becomes fully the belonging of bedek habayis. So Zog to Gemara. Let's analyze this. Zog to Gemara. Loi mi boye. It's pashet leman da amar kache bedek habayis tav si midaraisa. For sure, according to those who argue on Ula, and hold that this oil became the property of bedek habayis, it's pashet that the or would go to bedek habayis and the or wouldn't go to the kohen. El afilu leman amar loi tav si, even if all like Ula were midaraisa, Avada does not become bedek habayis, hanamili basar. The only part of the carbon that will say zet hafus, it's occupied, is the basar, because that's the part of the oila that belongs to the mizbeach. So therefore, bedek habayis can't get its hands on it. It already belongs to the mizbeach. Aval or, which the mizbeach never had a right to, that tafis, that will become actual bedek habayis. So therefore, if you were matkas and oila the bedek habayis, everybody agrees that the or there belongs to bedek habayis and it doesn't go to the kohen. So now we have two good examples of what krat lo'oilas hektish could mean. V'chein Omer Rab Nachman Omer Rabba bar Avua krat lo'oila haba min ha'moisros. Rab Nachman Omer Rabba bar Avua agreed with our first shot of Rab Chia bar Yosy. Amalei Rav Hamnuna le Rab Nachman. Rav Hamnuna told Rab Nachman, this shot has to be deleted. It has to be disregarded. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the only person who holds that an oila haba min ha'moisros, the hide does not go to the kahanim, rather the hide goes to bedek habayis, Kaman Ki Rabbi Yehuda. That would only be consistent with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda that we will soon learn. But we also know, Zok Rav Hamnuna, Hahadabe, Rabbi Yehuda was chayzer from his halacha. So therefore, there is no mandamar anymore who holds that in this situation, the hide would not go to the kohen. So therefore, your pshat is no longer valid. Now let's see who Rabbi Yehuda is. Netanya, Shishal and Nadav. The Mishnah that talks about all of the different shofars, which are pushkas, where money would be placed into to buy karbonis, like there would be a pushka that was made for shkolim, and there would be a pushka that was made for different karbonis and for eitzim, but they also had 6 additional pushkas for Nadava. What exactly were the Nadavas that you put these pushkas in? Because if you think about it, you can't put money. Let's say I was makabel to bring in the oila. I can't put money in the pushka, because what's going to happen? The kohen is going to take all that money, and you're going to bring karbonis. He can't have karbonis for the right bailam, because he has no idea who the money's from. So therefore, what are these nadavas referring to about these pushkas? So Zok Rabbi Yehuda, you know what it's referring to? La'oila haba min ha'moisros. We're talking about a carbon oil that you bought from moisros. And there's 2 scenarios of moisros. One we discussed, you had this asham that was extra. So they waited till it would get a moment they would sell it. But you could also have moisros from chatas. For instance, someone said, I'm bringing the chatas, I'm setting aside $100 to buy the carbon for my chatas. And then it turns out that he was able to buy the carbon for $75. So he has $25 extra. That goes in the Dova that also got put into this push. Now, what is the halacha with these karbanos? The Kohanim do not get the hide for these karbanos. So any money that they pulled out of these pushkas and they brought communal karbanos oila with, the Kohanim do not get the or from those pushkas. Amar le Rav Abnuna le Rav Nachman. I'm sorry. Shaloy Kohanim zakayim b'ayra. Divrei Rav Yehuda. Amar le Rav Nechemya v'amri la Rav Shimon. Im Kain, if you're going to say that the Kohanim don't get the R, bitalta midrasha shel Yehoyada HaKohen. You're conflicting the drasha that Yehoyada HaKohen made. The Tanya we learned, Zem Medrash, Darish Yehoyada HaKohen. The following drasha was made by Yehoyada HaKohen. It says in the pasuk by Asham hu, Asham Lashem. And we learn from here, Kol Shaba Mishum Chatos, Umishum Asam, Yilakach by Oilois, any extra money that you have, and because of that, it came from an Asham or a Chatos, and it was reincarnated into an Oila. What should you do with that Oila? Yilakach by Oilois, and what is the halacha with these Oilois? Abasar, Lashem, and Oira Lakahem. So you have a Mefurish Yehoyada HaKohen who tells us that clearly these Moisrais, the Kohanim, do get the R. So you cannot learn Pshat in our Mishnah or in the Brisa that the oil of Hektish, the Kohanim don't get the R. You cannot say it's referring to Moisrais because Rabbi Yehoyada HaKohen specifically said that the Kohanim do get the R. Zakt Gemara, Amar Lei, Elamar b'may mukamla. So if you cannot touch up lafuke oilish al hektish, where the R doesn't go to the Kohen, what is it talking about? Amar Lei, I'll tell you how I will explain it. So this is now a new pshat of what v'loy oilish al hektish is mukmina lei b'makdish nechasa. It was speaking about somebody who said, I'm donating all of my assets to hektish. And when someone does that, there's a little bit of a complication involved because he might have some assets that could be brought as karbanos, but most of his assets probably could only be royal for bedek habayis. If he has a behemoth tam, maybe he can be brought as a korban oila. But if he has a boat or a car or a house or any other physical or a watch, those cannot be brought. So they have to be bedek habayis. So the shiloh over here is, do you say that when someone makes one blanket statement, I'm giving everything to hektish, he means it's a uniform hektish, and therefore, since it can't all be kedushas or guf, it can't all be karbanos, he must have meant that he's giving everything to bedek habayis. Or do you split and say when he said I'm giving everything to hektish, he actually made two separate adobas, and he was saying whatever could be brought as a carbon, I want to be brought as a carbon. Whatever cannot be brought as a carbon, I want to be brought to bedek habayis. But there's a very important caveat. When he's saying I'm giving everything to hektish, right? That means I'm going to have no part of it, which means it cannot be used for a carbon of which I will get a part. It can't be used as a shlomim because clearly I want to give everything. So even if it's going to be kedushas aguf, it would only qualify to be an oilo, but it can't qualify to be anything else because when he says I'm giving it all to hektish, it means I'm giving it all to hektish. So based on those rules, let's take a look at this machlokes between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Elazar. So the Tanan we learned, Hamakish Nechasa v'ayu ben behemosh hareuyos legabim mizbeach. Zechar u'nekevos. He had male and female animals that would be appropriate to be brought as karbanos. Rabbi Elazar said it's all bedek habayis. There is no such thing as this being kedushas aguf because it's one big matana. But we know we have a rule that when you donate a behemoth that's right to be a carbon, it should always be used for its highest possible use, which would be a carbon. So we have a way of satisfying the different demands. And this is what you do. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Zecharim Yimkuru l'tzarchei. All the male animals are talking about the kabayis because it's only one nesina, but you can't just sell them. You sell them so that people will be able to use them for a carbon oila. Nekevos yimachu l'tzarchei zivchei shlamim. Nekevos you will sell to people who need to purchase a carbon shlamim. And the money that are paid for it, that cash, Udomeim yiplu im shar nechosim lebedek habayis. And the money received for these animals go into the general coffers of bedek habayis. So it is all bedek habayis, but you still have to make sure to channel the animals to their highest purpose, and that is that is for a carbon. That's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar. No, we will say that Mechalkin and Dibura, he actually meant two separate nesinas. And there was a Zacharim Atzman, Yikravu Oilos. The male animals you actually makriv as a carbon oila, because he meant to be makrish them l'shamayim as a carbon. Unekevois, which you can be makriv because you cannot use it for a chatos. So what do? Yimachru l'tzarchei shlamim. You could sell these animals for people. You can't be makriv them as a shlamim either, even though a shlamim could be in the keva, is because that's going to infringe on the fact that he wants everything to go to hektish and no part can come back to him. So therefore, all you can do is sell it, sell it to somebody who would bring a shlomim with the animal, and the cash goes back into hektish, but it has to be kedushas leguf. Therefore, v'yavi b'demeim oilois, then you would buy karbanos with them. V'shar nechasim, all the other nechasim that couldn't have been brought as karbanos, like boats, cars, watches, houses, properties, yiplu lebedek habayis. They go straight to bedek habayis. So zok the Gemara. Afilu le Rabbi Yeshua d'amar adam chaylek hektation. Even according to Yeshua, where someone just says a general statement, give everything to hektish, it actually means two separate nesinas. It means these are kedushas aguf and are karbonas, and these are not. That hanamili basar. That at most is the basar, meaning the basar would go the carbon, but the or toughens. So the animals that he said could have been brought directly as oilos, that the meat is to go to its highest purpose, it's going to be brought on the mizbeach. But the balt by an oila, the hide is not brought on the mizbeach. The hide will become bedek habayis because the hide is no different than a watch or a property or another asset. Therefore, hanamili basar will are toughest. So therefore, what does it mean? But oilas hektish, the money, but oilas hektish, the or does not go to the koyanim. It's oilas hektish that was part of an estate that the Bailam said, I want my whole estate to go to hektish. Those animals that are brought as oilas, the or of those animals are bedek habayis, they don't go to the koyan. So now we have still two options. Either it means moishus was slugged up, so either it means makbis oila lebedek habayis, or it means somebody was makdish kol nechasov. Those are two examples of a karbonis where the or would not go to the kohen. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda Omer prat leoilas gerim. It takes away oilas gerim, right? Our mission is prat leoilas gerim. Amalei Rab Shimon bar Chalkai leRavina otu ger lav ishu. Is a ger not a mensch? Of course, a ger is an ish. So how do you learn from ish to exclude the oil of a ger? Amalei prat leger shemeis ve'ein leyorshim. A ger set aside a carbon oil, and then he died. So now you have a carbon oil that's a yosim. It doesn't have an owner. That carbon the hide does not go to the kohen. The hide will go to bedek habayis. So Shlomi, now that we're at this point, would you agree with me that we can say that when the or does not go to the kohen, we don't just destroy it, we give it to bedek habayis? That seems to be the flow of
the only two options. Well, we said the or never gets burnt.
Yeah.
That's how we started. We went down this path because of that.
Indeed. Okay. Zok Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabbanan. Oilas ish. Ainly ela oilas ish. I would only know of it to oil of a man. Oilas noshim v'avodim minayin. Did you notice that I skipped the word gerim?
Yeah.
I skipped it because Rashi takes that out of the Girsah because of the Gemara that we just learned. Ish is not Mamayit gerim, and the Shita Milkavedja takes it out. So therefore, oilas ish, oilas noshim v'avodim minayin, Tamad or ha'oila, that's also extra. And therefore, riba, it's marba, even the oila of noshim v'avodim. Freik the Gemara, imkein ma tamad loimer oila seish, but it does say ish, which is a miut. Zok Gemara, it teaches us that it has to be an oila also leish, not a posel of carbon, similar to what our Mishnah taught us. Prat l'shanishcha dachut azman of chuslam If it's pigel, there should lo yehu akayanim zakayin ba'ira, and I assume that or It's not by the kabayis. That or gets destroyed with the carbon, but I'm not 100% sure. I would think that if the animal is shechted shaloi lishma, even though it's a kosher carbon, but since it's not oilas ish, because it's not oil b'al shem chayva, I would think that also the kayhan don't get the or. Hoil v'loy also the bailim l'shem chayva. Let's turn on to Kuv Gimel Amid Beis.
So on that, so right here is where our scroll says that the or gets burnt.
That what?
That the or gets burnt. When it's
so if it was pigel, it gets burnt.
When it's pigel, he says you have to note here that when it's pigel, it gets burnt.
Okay, shkoyach.
So there is a concept.
So maybe lo use a coin, lo use kahan is a coin buyer. Or ha'ila mikol mokim. It's marbe. So we have a ribu to tell us that even though it's not oilas ish because the bailim don't get the benefit of the carbon, nevertheless the coin still does get or. Zok to Gemara or ha'ila, or of the oil. Ainly Allah or ha'ila. The Torah is only gifting the hide of a carbon oil to the coin. Oyrais kache kache minayin. How do you know kache kache? So let's stop for a minute. In our Mishnah addressed this question, and the Gemara learned it from a Kal V'Chomer. Madach the oil where the coin doesn't get the basar, he gets the or. By the Asham Chatas where he gets the basar, surely gets the or. But the Tanakam of this Mishnah saw the need to learn it out of the puzzle. Minayin, Talmud Loimar, the next two words are skipped. Asher Hikriv. The word Asher Hikriv, anything that they're makriv, even if it will be a Chatas or a Nashim. I would have thought that even a shlomim the coin, he gets the benefit of the or and not the bailim. There is an anchor. There is a limit to how far we can stretch. There has to be similar to an oilam, oila kache kachim, af kol kache kachim. Kache kachim, the or will go to the kohanim, and we learn it from Asher Hikriv, but not kadeshim kal. That's one sheet of how we know that all kache kachim, the or goes to the kohen. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, and Rabbi Shmuel has an opinion similar to that of the Tana of our Mishnah. Ora oila, enli Allah oila, Irish kache kachim minai even didn't. Uma oila shlo zachu b'bsar zachu b'ayra, kache kachim shezachu b'bsar and einer din shezachu b'ayra. Are you going to tell me mizbeich yerchia shezacha b'basar v'lo zacha b'ar? Like we learned in the Mishnah, the Mishnah says that's not a kasha because malam mizbeich shekein lo zacha b'miktas, hamer b'kayan shezacha b'miktas. The basic the mizbeach he never gets any or, he never gets any or. But kayhanim the Torah specifically says by the oila, the kohen does get the or. So I was it'd be a svar to expand that through a Kal V'Chomer to the Osham and the Chatos and the Shalmei Tzibur, where the kayhanim will get the or.
Have you ever heard
What's that?
Have you ever heard of an upgefrekt on a Kal V'Chomer based on the fact that it doesn't exist? It's not a typical thing that the Mishnah would say.
Well, the Mishnah is saying that
it's a
the Mizbeach doesn't have shaykhis to or. I think that's what the time is. The Mizbeach doesn't have shaykhis to or. Where the Kal V'Chomer only applies to something that has shaykhis to or. But the Mizbeach doesn't have shaykhis to or.
So it doesn't even start.
Correct. And I think that's the Mishnah. So we're going to have to understand why did the first time in this Rashi need a pasuk. Rabbi Shmuel has a very good argument, right? The Kal V'Chomer in our Mishnah is a pretty good argument. Right? So the Gemara is going to probe that soon.
Oh, I had the kasha in the Mishnah also. It's an interesting answer.
I understand your kasha in the Mishnah, but the Gemara seems to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So Zok Gemara, but we have a third shita, which is a little bit more out of the box. David Zolti asked me a very simple question. The only carbon that you actually separate the skin from the hide is the oila. In the other carbonis, you don't separate the skin from the hide. So would that have an impact? So Zok Gemara, it absolutely will. Rabbi Yomer, Kol Atzmai, you don't need by any carbonis a special limit, Kal V'Chomer, you don't need a limit that the or goes to the kohen. Because the or is part and parcel of the basar. And I'm going to demonstrate that all carbonis, besides the oila, all carbonis, where the basar goes, the or goes. It's only by the oil where the Torah separates the two. And the Torah said the meat goes on the mizbeach without the or. Now we have to figure what to do with the or, so the Torah had to tell us. So look, Rabbi, because the general rule is by the parva and the srafim, Moshiur and the srafim, everything gets burnt, the meat and the or. Hang the or saying the srafim anymore. The meat goes to the kohen, and it goes with the hide connected. Matana kohen, and they can do whatever they want with this limb that has a skin on it. They can take the hide off and use it separately. They can cook it with the hide if they want and eat it with the skin. By kachim kalim, the meat with the or goes to the baila. Again, they have the same option. But oil is unique because the Torah said take the skin off and only put the aver, the basar, on the mizbeach.
Yeah, but we know
What's that?
we know by the Kashim column the or does go to the Kohanim.
No,
Either the
but
Kohanim
by Shlomim, the or goes to the Yisrael, goes to the owner.
It goes to the owner?
Yep, goes with the meat. The oil is the only one that's not clear. We don't have clear direction what to do with it. Number of the Hemshit is oil, but nitach oil and sachel. Yochel lo yehu Kohanim zakoin ba'ira, but loimer ora oila asher hikriv. So the Baal, the Kohen was makrivit, he gets the or. But I don't need a limit for others. Other ones is push it goes with the meat. So you don't need any special limit. Zog to Gemara, lo yiyah, there's an extra word lo yiyah, pratlet full yoim. A full yoim who's tameh, or an einin, or mechosik kippurim, who cannot eat the meat, they don't get the or either. Now, why is the fact that I can eat or not eat the meat, why should that impact my ability to receive or, which is not edible anyway? The Zog to Gemara, sheyachol, you could have made an argument to say not like that. Lo yisku b'basar, I understand. Shu lachila, and they're telling me they can't eat it. But maybe yisku b'or she'einu lachila. That's why you need a special basar. Talmud Omer lo yiyah. It's only if you could eat it. Prat l'mechusik yipurim utfil yoim. V'oining, they don't even get a chelik of the or of a korban. Fight the Gemara. The Tanakama nami tebek lemidina. Why did the Tanakama, all the way at the top of our daf, need to learn it from Asher Hikriv to be Marbe Kachim? He has the perfect Kavachimer that Rabbi Shmuel has, that our Mishnah has. Zok Gemara, you're right. But Milsa, the Asi Bekavachimer, Torah because of the cross. Sometimes there is something that you could have learned from a Kavachimer, but the Torah wants to say it before. That's not a kasha. Zok Gemara weiter. Frank the Gemara for Rabbi Shmuel, who learns it at Abu Kavachimer. So the word Asher Hikriv that the Takama used to teach us that the or of Kachim goes to the Kohen, he doesn't have that anymore. So Rabbi Shmuel, Hi Asher Hikriv, my Ovid Lay. What's Rabbi Shmuel going to do with the extra words of Asher Hikriv? Tomorrow he will learn it to teach us Prat L'Tfil Yoim, U'Muchosik Kippurim, V'Oinei. Frank the Gemara, but Rabbi Shmuel, but the Tanakama learned that out of Lo Yiyah. We have Lo Yiyah to tell us that. We just learned that. Frank the Gemara, typically Lo Yiyah. Zok Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel Tamei, who needs Lo Yiyah for another limit. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, Namar Ba'oila Lo Yiyah, V'Nemar Ba'osham Lo Yiyah. And we learned Mala alone, just like by the Osham, Atzmoisav Mutarin, the bones go to the Kohen and they're mutter to be used. They're mutter. You can keep them forever. And we know it goes to the Kohen because the Kohen gets the meat. Afkan, that's Moisav Mutarin. Even by an oil where the Kohen doesn't get the meat, the bones are mutter, they're not Kodesh. So we need Lo Yiyah to learn that Gzeir Shava. And we need Lo Yiyah to be completely extra. Mufni, they have to be extra. Ilay Mufni, if it wasn't extra, then you could make a pircha on this Gzeir Shava. Ikalamifr Mala Asham Shekem Besari Mutter. The Asham, you know why the meat, why the bone is mutter? Because the meat is mutter. But maybe the oil, since the meat is not mutter, the bone shouldn't be mutter. So therefore, we need Lo Yiyah Kro Yiseru. Since it's an extra pasuk, even though you can make a pircha, why I shouldn't learn oil from Asham, the extra pasuk tells you learn it from Asham anyway, and the bones of an oil are mutter, they're not kodesh, and therefore Asher Hikriv is what we need to teach us. Pratlet Ful Yoim U'Mechusik Kippurim V'Oinim. Beautiful. Now let's remember the Mishnah we started the daf with. The Mishnah said if the Mizbeach doesn't get its share, the Kohen won't get its or, no matter what. Now let's see what this Mishnah says. Kol HaKodshim She'ir Ben Psul Kodim Lev Sheitim. If Kodshim became puzzle before you took the skin off, then Ein Oirei saying like Hanim, the Kohen won't get the or I guess because the or was connected to the meat when the meat became possible. But la'akar of shaitan, what if you took the skin off of the meat and then the meat became possible? Or the kind keep the or. In other words, even though the Mizbech is not getting its share, the kind will get the or. And that's something that the Gemara is going to raise. Amr of Penina Skana Kayhan. Penina said, Miyamai, in my entire life, Loira Isi or Shiyote Lobeis Hasri. I never saw that an or that was by itself, that wasn't connected to meat, should be burnt. It must be because la'achar of shaitan, no matter what, it's already saying like even though if a psul occurred. Because for sure a psul must have occurred, yet nevertheless the or was not thrown away. So it must be that the or, once it's pulled off of the animal, even if the meat becomes puzzle, the or is still good. Amar Rabbi Kiva, midvar of Lamad, from our Panini's Kanakahadim's testimony we learn.
Second, Yosy, Yisrael's a kasha.
What happens if it's possible before he takes up the or?
That's a very good question, and that's what the Gemara is going to be analyzing precisely when the psul impacts and when not. And that's why the Gemara is going to start off with the steer from our Mishnah to the previous Mishnah, and it's going to discuss that detail exactly. So Zok to Gemara, Amar Rabbi Kiva midvar Lamadnu Shamab Shedes HaBachar. What if you had a bachar? The bachar, if it's a tam, the halach is it's shechted and the meat goes to the kohen. But after you shechted it, you saw that it was a treifa, meaning igloy milchel and it should never have been brought as a carbon. So you might say that the or gets thrown out. Zok Gemara no. The kohen get the or. Why? Because Rabbi Chanina said that once the or is separated from the animal, you didn't, even though technically it was possible before, but since you were not aware of the psul until the or was already removed from the animal, it doesn't become possible, and it goes to the kayanim, which is something that you can understand from Rabbi Chanina's edus, that never, no matter what, not for bechor, not for anything, I never saw or that was already taken off the behemoth, that it should be thrown out, and it always goes to the ground.
Yeah, but there's an option here. It can go to the Bible.
I'm sorry?
There's an option here.
No, it wouldn't go to the because the Bechar always goes to the Kohen. If that a Bechar, whether it's a Balbam or it's not a Balbam, the Bechar always goes to the Kohen. Right. And if it's not a Balbam, it's a carbon, and the meat goes to the Kohen.
But it is, but
and
it
if
is.
It's a Balbam, then it goes straight to the Kohen, and he can do whatever he wants with it. So if they found out before that it was a treifa, it would have went straight to the Kohen. Because that's a boom.
You have to be pointed.
I'm sorry?
Before it's a Balmon, you have to be pointed?
No, Bechar Behema, if it's a tam, it's brought as a carbon, and the Kohen gets the meat. And if it's a Balmum, the Kohen just gets it, and it's a free animal for him.
And he just feeds it to his family.
That's why there's a whole issue. You need a special smicha to be able to be mater Bechar because of a mum. Because what used to happen was, I had a flock, and I got a Bechar born. Now it's a carbon. Do I want to be dealing with a carbon? I don't want to hold a carbon, and especially after the Beis Mikdash was hard, who wants to have a carbon in this midst? It's asking for trouble. So you know what they would do? They would deliver it to the Kohen. They say, you know what? You take it. You're the one who benefits. If it's going to get a mum, you get to keep it. So why should I hold on to it for you? I don't want it. You take it. And the Kohen will take it. And a week later, the Kohen calls the Rav and says, oh, there's a mum. So the Gemara discusses, can you trust the Kohen that maybe he put the mum in on purpose because he was trying to get a free behem out of it? So that's a whole discussion of how you could be mater a mum with a bechar with a mum, and when can you trust the kohen and when can you not trust the kohen?
So when they say the halach of roya achem mistava, that is just to go to the kohen, the baal gets nothing out of it.
No, yirat shistava is a different thing. That's if I have a carbon,
Today, right? Today's day.
By bechar there's no yirat shistav. If it has a mum now, then it goes straight to the kohen. If it doesn't have a mum now, you bring it as a carbon.
Wow.
There's no yirat shistava by a bechar. Nowadays, where there's no mizbeach, that's when you have no choice. You have to deal with it. Because bechar is unique. Nobody has to be makdash. It automatically meirechem gets its kedusha. So it's the only serious kedusha threat that we have nowadays. Nowadays, the only real kachim we know, no meshuggah is going to go over to an animal and say, I raise oil. because who wants to have it? It's like a toxic device because you're only asking for trouble. You could be Moel B'Hekdesh, you could be over having enough of Kachim, right? But a Bechor, we don't have a choice. It's Kaddish Merechem. So the sooner it gets a mum, the better. But you're not allowed to make a mum in Kachim.
You just let it graze. You can't do anything with it because there's no
Right, and the
carbon.
Kohen has to let it graze and hope that it gets a mum on its own as quickly as
I
possible.
didn't realize that it goes to the coin. I thought that once it gets a mum, you can be.
No, once it gets a mum, the Kohen gets to keep it, and that's best case scenario for him. It's not a carbon; you get a live animal. You can keep it.
You just let it graze and you don't feed it. You just let it die.
Yeah, just let it go. Yeah, just let it go.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that to a Bechor. It's Kachim. I don't know if you're allowed to be Ma'abed Kachim.
So when we learned this Gemara with Donnie Finkel, he used to tell us this story that he heard from Rabbi Handler, that he remembers a Bechor animal in the town that he grew up in.
What do you mean?
And
It's very common. The reason why, the way they avoid it is if you have a pregnant animal, you right away take a shutuf a goy in the animal so that if a goy is a shutuf,
You shouldn't have this problem.
right? But what if, but you can have, what if a guy forgets to do that? He could get stuck with the Bechor.
Yeah.
A Bechor is like mamish a hot potato.
That's the story all the time.
Okay. So in the Chamor, you can make thousands of dollars off of it. You could sell tickets to Pigeon Bet Chamor, but a Bechor Behem is just nothing but trouble. Zok to Gemara. The Chachamim Maimrim ain't loyra in a raya because you never saw it. That means it didn't happen. Can't be a raya from that. Even if the hide is separated from the animal, if the carbon becomes fossil, yesh elevasis. So now the Gemara says, let's remember what we just learned earlier today, the earlier mission. Kol shalaizach hamizbech b'psara, laizach kan b'oira, the af al gav, the ivishete la'or, kaidem zrika. The Mishnah says, if the meat's not going to go to the mizbeach, the or is not l'kayanim. Doesn't specify. That means even if before the zrika you took off the hide, and then the basar became tameh, and you can't put the basar on the mizbeach, the hide, you can't make this rika, and that'll take care of the hide. No, the hide gets burnt as well. That's what the Mishnah says. Hamani or mani, who holds that just because the basar became tameh, you cannot do this rika to at least release the or to the kohen. You know who says that? Rabbi Elazar Rab Shimon. The Omar ein adam maratza ala or b'fnei atzmai. If the dam is not going to be maratza on the basar, because in this case the basar is tameh, the dam will not be maratza on the or, and therefore this or has to be burnt. But the problem is our Mishnah seems to say otherwise. Ema seifa kol hakachim shir b'msul koydem absheitan einay resein l'kahanim, because the zrika was on the or and the basar that's possible, you can't do the zrika for. But l'achar b'sheitan, if you already separated the hide from the animal and then the meat became possible, or resein l'kahanim, you can still do the zrika and it'll be mated the oris to the kahanim, which is a direct contradiction to what the first Mishnah says. Astan l'Rebbe, the Omar Hadam Meratza ala or b'fnei. So are we saying that the Reisha Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, the first Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, and Seifa our Mishnah is Rebbe? That's not logical. Omar Abayi, no. Mid the Seifa Rebbe, since our Mishnah is clearly going according to Rebbe, that you could make zrika on or alone and it would be kosher, and the or would go to the kohanim. Reisha is also Rebbe. Reisha nami Rebbe. But if the Reisha is Rebbe, then why does the Mishnah make a blanket statement that if the Mizbeach doesn't get the basar, the Kohen doesn't get the Ar? Teretz is because practically speaking, that will never happen. Because Umoide Rebbe, Shein Havshet Kodim Zrika. Never, the practice of the Beis Hamikdash is you don't start dealing with your personal issues. First, you take care of the carbon's requirements, and you make the Zrika. So you would never take the skin off before the Zrika. So that's never going to happen. So therefore, the first Mishnah can make a blanket statement that if the Mizbech doesn't get its basar because it became possible, the Kohen doesn't get its or because the assumption is that before the Zrika, the or was not disconnected. You can't say stomach like the Gemara started with the dik, but afagav da'afshetela. No, because you're not going to say afagav da'afshetela because it doesn't happen. The norm is first you do the Zrika while the skin is on the animal, and only then do you take it off. So therefore, it's very consistent. At the end of the day, if the basar is possible, the or will not go to the kohanim. That the Mishnah earlier seems to indicate. Otherwise, that's only because it would never happen that it would get. So not forget. Really, the halacha is if the hide was disconnected and the basar became possible, avad the hide would go to the kohen. It would go to the kohen, even though the basar was possible. The zrika will work for the hide alone. So why did our Mishnah, the first Mishnah, seem to indicate that doesn't happen? Because what the Mishnah is saying is not that it's impossible for it to happen. It's not the norm for it to happen. Because you'll never have a scenario where the hide will be taken off before the zrika. So therefore, we say if the mizbech doesn't get its meat because there was a psul that occurred before the zrika, automatically the hide is possible. But if the hide was separated, in the Chachamim, maybe it would be. But it's not a case that's relevant because it never happened. That's how we stole it out of the Rebbe. The Rebbe should have to cut mizrika. Rav Amar the opposite. With the Reisha or Belezer Bar Shimon, the Reisha Shimon hold that even if the hide is separated from the basar, if the basar is not going to be royal mizbech, the hide, the zrika will not help for the hide, and the hide will not go to the kohanim. Our Mishnah say for not Belezer Bar Shimon. But what does it mean when our Mishnah says kolakachim shir ben psul koydem lav shaitan? Einar resein lakahanim, and we're making a deal. Akab shaitan resein lakahanim. Koydem lav shaitan doesn't literally mean before it was skinned. And la'achab shaitan doesn't mean literally after it was skinned. Koydem hevshet means turning on to kuf dalid amar aleph.
Shenir lav.
Koydem of shaitan means umay achar hevshet. Koydem shenir lahavshit achar shenir lahavshit. You know when something becomes near lahavshit, you know when something is ready to be skinned after the zrika. So that's what it's saying. If it happened before the zrika, then the or goes l'sreifa. And if it happened after the zrika, then the or goes to the kohen. So kohen havshit and la'ach havshit doesn't literally mean before and after it was skinned. It means before it's ready to be skinned, meaning before zrika, and after it's ready to be skinned, which means after the zrika. And then everything fits in perfectly. Okay, so we'll stop here. And the Mishnah much. I'm not sure if Akiva was able to find somebody to say sure on Shabbos, but the Mishnah at 6:45, we will be mamshich with Kuvdal.
Meretz Hashem will be here. I find this very difficult to believe. There were different stations in the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't. They didn't have like, the guy who was doing this Rika wasn't doing the Hefsheta, right? They separated everything out. I think he was waiting to hear, was that Zurich? There's so many mistakes that were made. I don't even know who I'm spritzing with. I don't know who I'm doing.
Well, I want to tell you something. It's very possible that it was like a relay race. So one thing, remember in Campbell used to have relay races. First, he has to take the ball and the spoon to that side. Then he's got to take that. So it was probably in order to make sure everything was organized done properly. Maybe they set it up that action A triggered action B, and so on and so forth.
There's different kabaras going on at the same time, maybe.
Thousands of kabaras going at the same time. So you had the guy who doing your shechita. He gave kibul dam. We learned about this for the last 2 months. He had kibul dam. He sent it over, and then the animal went a different direction because it had to go to where the hooks were.
And then there's
another skinning it.
The animal went to the butchering area while the kohen with the mizrach ran straight to the back.
Or they started cutting it up to put the murim on. So I can't believe that they had like some kind of ticket system where they knew exactly which came first.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help that very, very soon we should be able to see how it's done.
Emir Hashem. We're all going to become cattle farmers. A good
all the very best.
Enjoy the nachas, Yosy. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Is today the big day?
What's today?
No,
Sunday. Sunday's
the big launch.
Sunday,
Yeah, and Baruch Hashem, the complication that we were having is pretty much diffused. It's pretty much diffused.
Excellent.
Okay.
Just by you showing up. Very good.
Okay, be well.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.